Welcome to Level Up Tribes. Level Up Tribes provides resources to help you attain the necessary resources to level up your mind, body, and soul and realize your full potential. It is about exploring, learning, providing you with the tools from the experts for you to create a better version of yourself. I am your host, Agnes Goodwine, and welcome, Tribes. So I'm super excited to see you again. Last time I saw you and the first time we met was in Utah.
Yeah, it's been crazy since Utah. I've been all over the place.
Really? Like out of
Yeah.
state?
Yeah, I have been in since then. We've been in New Mexico, California, Ohio, and I'm trying to think if there's someplace else on there, but everybody's just getting back into stuff, but just had to, work some stuff with family, just a lot of little bit of things. Yep. Was just in Cleveland, saw our friends from Ponce, so it's nice to see them.
Oh,
nice. So I'm back in town now. I think that we're gonna hit my wife's family's from New Mexico, so we try to go there so the kids can see their grandparents.
What part of New Mexico?
They're in Albuquerque.
That's a beautiful place. Yeah, so I'm excited to have you to discuss about anything about public speaking. And
sure.
So let me welcome you to Level Up Tribes podcast. I'm super excited to meet you again. We met in Utah for a municipal clerks conference where you gave a seminar. And so Frank Kitchen is here with us. He's the founder of Frank Kitchen Enterprises. He's also the creator of the I Live Fresh recipe he shares on stage. You have several books under your belt. Yeah. And I actually just downloaded one. I haven't read it yet, but
okay.
I will.
Awesome.
You work with different organizations who want to help their employees break through their mental barriers to cook up the dreams they hunger for. I love that because every message that you have goes with your last name, Frank Kitchen.
Yeah.
It's very creative. And so you're here today to help us spice up our public speaking. So I can't wait to get to that. But first, I always like to start with your story. And so let's get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
So yeah, tell us all your business.
Yeah, so all my business, I have some fun. So you've heard it, but I'll share it with the listeners and people who are watching this. My name is Frank Cornelius Kitchen, and the reason I share my middle name is I want people to know more about me. And for the longest time, I was wondering what this name was about. My mom said, "Hey, I want to let you know who you are, where you come from, and who you can be." So I'm named after my father, my grandfather, and I joke with people as the most popular room in the house, the kitchen. So my dad served in the military. My grandfather served, but he also kind of taught me how to connect with people and give me the gift of gab. And then the kitchen is the room that brings people together. So the story for me was I grew up as this military brat. So we're grown up all around the world. And I grew up quiet and shy because we're moving all the time. So trying to make new relationships was tough because you make these relationships and then boom, you're moving again every 3 to 4 years. So I've lived in 15 different places. And during that journey, I ended up going to college. And when I got to college, we had all these different student clubs and organizations, and they allowed me to truly showcase who I was. Now I didn't have to fit into the crowd or go and do, and I was able to be me. So during that point, being this quiet, shy guy, I started to become a little more outgoing. I got involved with our student government, our Black Student Union. And then I got into this thing called the program board. And the program board is the group that brings all the entertainment to campus. So, we get to bring the comedians and do the parties and the movies. And I was doing that. And during this time period, my advisor saw this and goes, "Hey, you know what? I think you might be good at this in a career." I'm like, "Nah, this is just fun. I wanted a t-shirt and a trip. That was the reason I got involved and to help pay for school." So the funny thing was, I'm getting ready to graduate and I'm giving her my resume and to look it over for me, to help me, just proof it. And all of a sudden I'm getting these letters going, "Hey, sorry, you don't meet the scholarship here. We don't have a job for you." I'm like, "What is going on?" So I go to Retta. I'm like, "Retta, what is this?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, I proofread your resume, but then I mailed it out behind your back to people who I thought that you would be good at. I think you've got a possibility with this training and leadership career." So I go finish up college and I start to work in retail, and I'm doing training and management, doing the stuff I'd learned in the college. And then my old school Retta comes back to me and goes, "Hey, we have a position here as a diversity director for the college. You should apply for it." And I apply for the spot and I get it. So I'm working at this college now for about 9 years. I'm doing leadership development and training diversity. And my students, I'm always pushing them to go chase after their dreams and their passion. And a lot of times I've got to go talk and do it. And everybody's like, oh, who's the best talker here? Like Frank. And I'm like, why are they asking me? I'm the quiet shy. I'm like, I was voted runner up for most quiet and shy in my high school. The person who was number one was a friend of mine. He's a pastor at a church now. I'm a professional speaker. So for everybody listening to this, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. So I ended up getting one of my students coming up to me and he goes, hey, Frank, you challenge us to live our dreams. What are you doing to live yours? And I was like, whoa, using, my quotes and my teaching on me. And they knew that I love working with people. I love teaching. So my students, I was working at this college in Cleveland, Ohio, pushed me and challenged me to leave my college career to step out to become this professional speaker. So you're like, okay, guy doesn't really have business experience, not really, an outgoing person. You're going to start your own business and become a speaker. And that was 16 years ago. And it's been an up and down, career. We'll talk more here during the interview. But the first 7 or 8 years, it was rough. The last 6.5 years, I've been doing it full time. I mean, it became my piece. And what happened was, when I share with people now, is like, when you can understand this art of how to speak and communicate in public, it can open up so many doors for you living the dreams, quote, you hunger for. So I use my name in it. We'll talk more about that one later too. But that's the big piece was I wanted to travel. I wanted to work with people, and speaking was the door that opened that opportunity for me.
Yes. When I was reading your story, your pivotal moment was what, like 2015, I think the year was.
Yeah. It was June 18th, 2015. So there's June 18th, and then my wife and I will talk about it and say there's June 26th. So June 18th was when I opened my eyes up. June 26th is when I started living. So on June 18th, I was working for a company. I had been talking about that, I wanted to be this full-time speaker. I want to run this business. And I was talking about it. I was thinking about it, but I still wasn't, working through. I was waiting for the perfect time. So I was working for this company selling educational software. And I was like, you know what, maybe the speaking thing is not for me if I do really good here, because I got kids and family, I got to take care of them. And I was working my way towards a promotion, going through this training program, and they're talking like, hey, just keep doing what you're doing and we'll go. So I finally got called into this meeting, and I'm like, yeah, this is going to be the day for a promotion. My wife's all excited about it. And I get called in. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I go over to the Metro Center Mall, and there's so Panera Bread Company, Phoenix, Metro Mall, that mall's getting torn down right now. But I get called in for this meeting with my boss, and I'm thinking I'm going in to find about my promotion. I'm about to go on a trip that I'd scheduled to go see family, but I go see all their clients in the area. And he's like, what do you want for lunch? I get my lunch. I sit down, and at this table, I have this folder handed to me, and he goes, this isn't working. And it wasn't poor work performance or anything like that. He goes, this isn't working. We're going to go in a new direction, but we like you so much. The owners wanted to make tomorrow your last day, but because we like you, you can stay another week.
Oh,
the choice
God.
is yours. Well, I'm not expecting to get fired, and my last name's Kitchen. So I'm getting fired in a kitchen, which is kind of, funny when you think about it now. But the thing was, it was Father's Day weekend. And so I'm getting fired on Father's Day. I've got a 2-year-old, but then my wife is pregnant. So now I got to think about, what am I going to say to her? She's pregnant. She's 6.5 months. So you don't want to put that stress on your wife. I'm like, what are we going to do? And to make it worse it's Father's Day weekend, but we're going to my in-laws' house. And I got to go talk to my father-in-law and explain that, hey, you know what? I've got no job now. Your third grandchild's on the way. And, oh yeah, guess what? I want to be a professional speaker. That was the big deal,
Yeah.
And that was, quote, we can talk about it honestly here. I'm honestly, that was my come to Jesus moment, was realizing I had been just waiting around. I really wasn't putting I was thinking and talking it, but I wasn't putting the work in. And I had to get humble that weekend. And I talked to my wife, talked to my friends, say, everybody, I've lost my job. And, I'm at this, this, bottom point. What am I going to go do? And, thanks to my father-in-law, my wife and friends, like, well, hey, you got to take care of your family. That's your number one focus. Don't worry about, that job and stuff like that. What are you going to go do? And I talked to my wife and go, hey, you know what? I've been half-assing it. I mean, as far as these couple of years, I'm like, I haven't put the full work in. I was like, I would like to have a year of dedicated time to go and do this, because trying to find a job is tough. So I'm going, I was like, hey, even if I go look for a job right now, it's going to probably be 8 weeks before we ever see a check. So like, let me put the full effort in to this business. So my wife's like, okay. And I signed up. This is Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'd signed up for a speaker showcase that week. So they had all these speakers there at this conference. And so I signed up for the showcase. So I'm going to go to the showcase. I'm like, well, hey, I'm going to put the commitment in. My wife's like, hey, bring my dad with you. And I'm like, ugh. Now, you might understand this, but if everybody watching, my wife's from New Mexico and she grew up in a Hispanic family. So now I've got to go take my, Mexican father-in-law with me to this deal. And his baby daughter, is like, I'm the husband. And it's just like, oh, and he's never seen me speak in person. So there's the pressure there going,
Oh my God.
yeah. So I'm like going, okay, Dios mío, right? So, I'm like, oh, wow. So he goes with me. I do the speech and he's in the back of the room and I'm not focused on, there's like 200-300 people in the room, not focused on them. I'm focused on him in the back and he's nodding his head going. And when it's all over, we're driving back to the house. And he goes, you know what? This is what you're born to do. And whatever I can do to help you out, please let me know. And that included, getting us gift certificates to go get groceries, help him buy, diapers. And he goes, hey, it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. But he goes, this is what you're born to do. This is what the gift that God gave to you. So when I had that pressure off of me, and then I had the pressure off me, my wife's like, hey, I trust you, put the effort in. And I started talking to my friends. Next thing you know, within 2 weeks, I actually started booking speeches because before I was working for a job. So I was worried about vacation time and all these different deals and worried about, but now I didn't have, that pressure on me. The pressure was, okay, keep the lights on. Things changed. And that was when it kicked off. So then I tell people the 26th is when I finally said, okay, this is the full commitment. And I say, we'll talk about, I was like, this is my Live Fresh day. That was the day where it's like, okay, so I'll tell people June 26th every year, me and my family celebrates, like, this is our Live Fresh day, to where we committed to living that dream for me being a professional speaker. And for everybody else who I work with, I'm like, whatever the big dream is, start a business, start a podcast, lose weight. There's the day where we trip and fall, but then there's the day we said, okay, let's just pick ourselves up. And this is the day where I'm going to fully commit to it and make it happen.
Yes. If that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what will. That's beautiful. And, awesome that he saw your potential, and you got it in you. I mean, I saw it for myself, you're very dynamic and authentic. You don't play to be somebody else. It is just you.
And that was the pace for a long time. That we're here talking about public speaking, but a lot of times we try to fake it on stage. We try to be somebody who we're not. And I was on a panel discussion yesterday, and this morning, and they're going like, "What's the one tip about speaking in public?" And I go, "People want to hear your authentic you. They want to see you be genuine." So for years, I've been talking to people how to take care of their problems, but I never had a big problem. But when you can step on stage and say generally, hey, guess what? I asked the bill collector for a job. Yeah. That connects more with the audience there, not somebody trying to be perfect. And I go, hey, yeah, guess what? I was like, we were behind on our bills. They call up and they go, hey, are you going to pay this bill? And I go, well, right now, it's like, I'm trying to find a job. I'm like, well, you need to find one. I go, are you hiring? I mean, so when you're asking the bill collector, I'm like, it sounds funny now, yes. But it's like, but when you got to ask the bill collector for, work, then you recognize, okay, you got to put some, real work and effort into it. And as you said, when we're on stage and speaking to a group, people want to see you being real. And if the real means when you've fallen down, when you've gotten hurt, we can't be perfect. Nobody's perfect, but we've got the world where it's always trying to teach us to show our perfections. And that's not what attracts people. They want to know where you have failed. Have you been able to pick yourself up? So that's what made my speaking better, made the career pickup, was at that point said, okay, you know what? I'm at the bottom now. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Let's go for it.
Yes. Oh, I love it. So, so let's get to our topic of the day, which is public speaking. So what's your blueprint?
As far as
you just mentioned one. You just mentioned one, which is be authentic.
There's a couple things that I do. And when we talked about spicing it up, I tell people, I'm not sure if you like spicy food, but when you want spicy food, it takes a little bit of courage, right?
Yeah.
It takes a little confidence. I mean, I've got some friends who are from India and they took me out to eat, like, hey, Frank, try this. And I thought my tongue was going to fall off. Then I go out the same group again, like, hey, try this. I'm like, is that hot? They go, no, it's mild. I'm like, well, the last time you told me something was mild, my tongue fell off. I was like, I don't want to. So it takes some confidence. So when it comes to speaking, it takes confidence. I mean, you got to be confident in several areas. So when you ask the blueprint, when I'm working and coaching people and they're speaking, we don't worry about how to write the speech first. Because I share with people, you can have the best speech written. Most of us know how to write something. We've had to write a paper, report, stuff for work. But it's not the speech. Like, you can have the greatest speech written, but if you don't know how to deliver that speech, it doesn't matter how well that you wrote. So most coaches and places always work on how to write the speech, which is fine. But if you're nervous and you're not confident, in yourself, and things don't work. So the 4 areas, and we can break them down, are this when you say the blueprint. Number 1 is you have to be confident in yourself. So before you step on any stage, virtual, in person, you got to be confident with yourself. Number two is you have to be confident in your words. You know, what words are you going to be saying? What's going to come off of your tongue succinctly? Because many times you try to be like other people. So that's number two, your words. Number three is your message. You got to be confident in your message. So it means you should only speak on things that you have a passion for, or you've got an experience or knowledge of. If you're not passionate about it or you don't have any knowledge, guess what? It's not going to go good. And then the final one is you have to be confident in your environment. Where will you be speaking? So I can break those down and go a little bit deeper.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So let's go to the first one, confident in you. Now, whoever's watching, listening to this, male or female, it doesn't matter. We all at points lack confidence in ourselves. We don't like the way we look. We don't like the way we sound. We don't like the way we're dressed. And what we have to understand is we have to put ourselves in a position where we feel comfortable or confident in ourselves. So if you've got a superhero outfit, and I say there's an outfit. So for you, what's the outfit where you just feel your best?
Like
is there something in your closet right now?
Like a superhero costume? Or
there would be a costume, but if you think about it, superheroes only do their best usually when they're wearing their quote costume.
Yes,
I would say people call it the power suit. But what do you feel most confident in?
In my yoga outfit.
Okay. In your yoga outfit. So I've worked with speakers. And I'm like, hey, it's like if you guys step on stage in your yoga outfit, then you'll explain, hey, this makes me feel confident. It's gonna make you perform at your best. That becomes something that's part of you. So when I work with, like I said, men and women, they're pulling and tugging. They don't like their hair, their glasses. I'm going, okay, like, what do you feel comfortable in? And they go this. I'm like, what do you feel confident in? What do you feel like? Well, Frank, people tell me not to talk with my hands. I'm like, do you feel better when you talk with your hands? Like, yeah. It's like, okay, let's pull the best out of you. We shouldn't be trying to change ourselves. We should be trying to be our best. So when I say confident with you, when do you feel your best? So it could be a certain piece of clothing you're wearing, a certain hairstyle. Maybe there's a certain type of music you listen to before you step on stage, to get pumped up. That's you. When we're trying not to be ourselves, that's when we're not confident. And too many people will try to change us up. And now we're worried about, okay, am I wearing the right thing? Are my hands in the right spot? Am I saying, no, we want to be the best you. So that's the first one. Now, number two is your words. Too many of the people I work with, they want to sound smart, right? Yeah. We're about to go speak and give a presentation, and we want to sound smart. We want to have this big vocabulary, but we don't know the words. We don't know how to use the words or when to use them.
Yeah.
And what happens is we end up getting tongue-tied and we fumble over our words.
Yes.
So I share with people like, hey, what's your words? What do you say? What do you use? What makes you be authentically you? So I had a group who challenged me one time to go, Frank, you didn't use smart words on stage. I'm like, I'm going like, what's their problem?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, your word choice just wasn't appropriate. I'm like, what do you mean? So here's somebody trying to, critique me. Yeah. Not really give me feedback, but just critique. I'm like, what? Like, well, you said the word stuff. I'm like, well, at the time I used that word, is like, it was appropriate. I'm like, I was like, if I jumped on the stage and say, there are some times and occurrences in our life where we deal with situations and ramifications, and it doesn't sound real. I jumped up on stage, hey, guess what? There's a lot of stuff in my life that I didn't deal with. And because I didn't deal with that stuff, then guess what? Major stuff went down, which means I was fired. So guess what? If I didn't handle my stuff, then you know what? There's going to be all sorts of other stuff that nobody wants to deal with. And that stuff shows up in the paper. The whole audience understood it. Was the word smart? No, but it was my word, and it allowed me not to have the ands and the ums and fumble over myself.
Okay.
So for everybody who's listening to this, it's like, what are your words? Now, you can add words to your vocabulary, yes, but you add it when you feel comfortable with it, when you feel confident. If it's not something that you're confident with yet, don't use it. So yeah, go add to your vocabulary, but don't use it until it's appropriate. So if appropriate's not your word, then you say, hey, don't use it until the time is right. Appropriate, time is right, have the same meaning. But the way you say it, Agnes, and the way I say it, maybe I can't say that word appropriate. You can say it perfectly. So that's the piece when we talk about our words.
I like that one stood out to me because my issue, and I've mentioned this several times on my podcast, about my fear of public speaking. And a lot of it is because English is my second language. And so I get in my head. And so I don't use like the proper word choices, like you just mentioned. And I'm talking so fast in my head, like all these words are like in my head. And when they come out, I can't articulate some things.
Yeah, and we understand that because I've got my friends who are from Spain, from Mexico, from Puerto Rico, and especially the ones from Spain, they'll talk about it's like, oh, you people from Puerto Rico and Mexico, you butcher the language, you talk too fast, you slur your R's, and all that piece there, and now you're feeling bad about yourself. But guess what? There's a different dialect in each of those places, and there's beauty to it, and that's authentically you. So if you came up and go, hey, you know what? I speak very fast because in my culture we're known to speak fast, but I have to understand now that hablo despacia. I need to speak a little bit slower. That's your word. You could actually integrate English and Spanish in there and actually teach the audience like, oh, that's like you said, we're going to get real. Let's get real. You know? And what happens is it's authentically you. You're not fake. We people are turned off by fakes. We know what a fake is. And too many of these groups, as you said, will try to change you. It's like, well, you know what? You got a little bit of an accent. I know it's not I think accents are beautiful. I'm like, it actually makes me pay more attention.
Yeah.
Versus if everybody sounds alike. So yeah, we have to use our words. So yes, that's number 2. So Gladys is helping you out. Number 3 is our message. I worked in sales for a long time, and it was always hard to sell something that you didn't believe in. So many times we're asked to speak on something that we don't have a passion for, we don't have an experience with, or we just don't believe in. It's going to be hard to speak on. It's going to be difficult. You're going to get tripped up. If I'm going to come in here and say, guess what? I am the greatest auto mechanic in the world. I can't talk on that one because I'm not good at that. Yeah. But guess what? I can tell you, guess what? I am great for running cars into the ground. Here's what we've done. Our car's got 227,000 miles on it. The tires, because that's part of me. That's genuinely inside of me. I got an experience with it. Yeah. So when we speak, it's got to be something we've got an experience with, something we've got knowledge about, or something that we're passionate about. If it's not in those 3 areas, we're going to have some issues. We're not going to feel confident. And now we're going to feel nervous. And when we're nervous, that energy transfers over to the audience. If the audience sees you looking nervous, then the audience looks nervous. You see them looking nervous. Now you get worried. Now we have this whole, just perfect storm of where it's not going to work out. But when you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to tell where I'm from, because guess what? Agnes is the best at being Agnes. Nobody knows more about you or your story than you. Nobody in that audience can challenge you because this is you. Yeah. So for me, when I step on stage, guess what? No one can challenge me on all the jokes I've received from the last name Kitchen. No one can challenge me on, about my kids. No one can challenge me on, hey, guess what? This is how I got up off the ground when I got fired. And people are like, well, that's not in the book. That's not those numbers. I'm not trying to sell that book or numbers. I'm telling you my story. And I'm not saying it's guaranteed to work. I'm just saying, here's what works for me. Go ahead and try it. Let me know how it works out. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. So that's our message, is we have to be confident with our message. And then the last one, this is what trips up everybody, is our environment. Where are we speaking? That freaks everybody out. And the environment is where you're speaking, as far as the location, the people you'll be speaking to, how you'll be speaking to them. Is it going to be on, Zoom? Is it going to be in person? Do I have to do flip charts? Do I have to memorize it? Do I have to read this? Oh my goodness. But guess what? We can control all of that because we get to set our own environment. So I'm watching you right now in video. I'm sure your house is set up a certain way. I'm reading like the Bible verse behind you because that's who you are. You've set that up because that's who you are. So everybody speaks a little bit differently. So I'm going like, let's put ourselves in the best situation. So if you like to walk around, then you may say, hey, I want a clip-on microphone because I don't want to hold onto a microphone or be behind a lectern. That's me. I don't like that. Hey, you know what? I don't want people being in straight rows. Can you put them at round tables? Okay, you can control that. Hey, I'd like to use projector and have screens to show people slides. Go ahead. I don't like slides. Don't use slides. All those are things that you can control, and you explain to people, in order for me to speak at my best, here's how I need my environment to be set up. Yes. And if people want you to have your best performance, then they're going to pretty much allow you to do that. And if not, you go ahead and tweak it and change it. But with the 4 steps that I showed you was, anytime I work with anybody who's got a fear for public speaking, I go, let's figure out what your fears are. So you said, hey, Frank, using my words is the one that really resonates with me. So then we work on that. You're like, oh, I'm good with feeling confident myself and my message and the environment. Okay, good. Once we get that one out of the way, then the rest is gold. And we can teach you how to write the speech and how to go deliver it. But for anybody who's fearing public speaking, my first question always is, I was like, what gives you trepidation? What do you fear? What makes you feel uneasy? What gives you anxiety? And they'll give me that information. And then we work on that first. And once that's out of the way, everything else, like I said, is icing on the cake, because everything else is just fun. Let's get the thing that worries you and stresses you out of the way first, so we can focus on the good stuff.
Awesome. So you do work with individuals?
Yes. So I work with individuals. Yeah, I work with individuals, and actually here in December, I'll be re-releasing it. I've got a program, as you said, now it's called Spice Up Your Speaking, but it's going to be a self-guided program where people can go through and learn how to improve their speaking. I had a version of it pre-COVID, and I had people who are firefighters and teachers, and they loved it, but it didn't talk anything about virtual presenting. So I pulled it down, and I'm re-recording it now, adding virtual aspects to it, so people understand, here's how I speak in person, here's how I speak virtually, because now those are two different, creatures. And it's something we have to think about now when it comes to public speaking, because public speaking now isn't just to be on a stage. Speaking as a podcast host, I've worked with podcast, hosts for their speaking. That's public speaking. Speaking at somebody's wedding, public speaking. Job interview.
You think that podcast is public speaking?
Yes.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. A person who is and I'll share with you, here's all the things I've done, and they're all public speaking. Public speaking is being able to use the art of speaking in public a confident way. So if you think about it, you'll nod your head. These are all ways of public speaking. I was a public address announcer for sports teams. That's public speaking, but it's a certain style. I have done acting before. That's public speaking, just different style. Podcast host. I've been an MC for events. I have been a fundraiser as an auctioneer. I've been a professional speaker. Those are all different forms of public speaking. Even if you jump on a Facebook Live right now, you're speaking to the public, whether it's one person or a group. That is public speaking. So all those areas, we can use the same skills to go and do. So if you're going to be speaking as a podcast host, you still have to be confident in yourself, correct? You have to be confident in yourself. You have to be confident in your words. You have to be confident in the message that you're delivering and the environment or the format that you're using to record the podcast. So the 4 things I just taught earlier reflect in all the different areas. If I've got somebody I'm working with who's going to be a public address announcer, confident in themselves, how they take care of their voice, the message that they're going to deliver, even though they're reading it. I've worked with people who are newscasters. It's all public speaking.
Oh, wow. I'm curious now because, you mentioned this whole virtual public speaking would be one thing that is different besides having a huge audience that you have to be prepared for when you do a presentation online.
Okay. Well, whether it's in person or virtual, public speaking requires people being able to hear you, correct?
Yeah.
So good sound. So you've got your microphone on right now. If you didn't have those on, I probably couldn't hear you very well. I've got my microphone in front of me. So when we're thinking about virtual, it's like, okay, let me make sure my sound is working so people can hear me, because there's nothing worse than we say, hey, can you hear me? So whether we're in person, we've got a microphone there, to talk, because you're going to go to a room. Oh, this room's got 500 people in it. Okay, well, do you have a microphone? Because I need people to hear me, because if they can't hear me, then that's blood in the water and the sharks are going to attack. People talk louder than you. Well, if I'm speaking virtually, I'm in my house right now. I've got my kids. I've got a microphone that's going to block out all the background noise. So lawnmower goes by or something happens, that noise is blocked out. So sound is a good one when we go virtual. The next one is, if we're on a stage in person, can they see you? So in person, there's lights. For me, I've got lights here in my studio, so you can see me. If I turn the lights off right now, you can see this. I'm not sure if this will be posted with the video, but let me go ahead and turn my lights off. That makes a huge difference right there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Right. So lighting is a big one. It's just like, let's see if we can actually see, who is speaking. Virtually also, we have to recognize that we're competing against the Netflix and the Disney Pluses of the world. Mm-hmm. If I just sit here on the screen all the time in the same spot, you're going to get bored. So you might see me lean in. You're going to see me use my hands. Movement. Our eyes pick up movement. When we speak, there's a couple things. 80% of speaking, communication is nonverbal. It's not the words. It's the other pieces. It's going to be our voice tone, our inflection, our pacing, our body movement. I mean, if you and I are on the street right now and you're walking down the street and you see me running really fast, the opposite direction of you, what does that say to you? Something bad's about to go down, right? I didn't have to say there's a fire going on. There's a dinosaur chasing me. you just knew from the actions. So once again, with this whole thing about public speaking, in many ways, it is almost like performing and acting. I could say, hey, you know what? My son's got curly hair. That doesn't do much. My son's got big curly hair, big curls.
Yeah.
Now you saw the motion and now you can see it. So your body is ultimately a prop. So when we're working virtually, we have to recognize, okay, people are watching this. What am I going to do to keep them in tune? So how it works out for humans is we look for action first. So we got to have the actions that represent what's going on. I'm going, I'm excited to be on your podcast today. You can see that. You can also hear it in my voice because of the tone. But if I don't do that, I'm like, I'm excited to be here today. The words are the same, but you're laughing and who's listening to like, man, that guy does not want to be here, even though the words were the same. So that's something we have to think about is when we're talking about we're excited. I mean, think about this one. If you're excited, how do you talk?
Fast.
Fast, right. So exactly. So if we're excited about something, we tend to pick up our speed. Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here today. I can't wait to share with you. But now when something's important, what do we do? When something's important, what do we do?
We sit back, kind of lean back, be quiet.
Lean back, quiet, we slow down. So I've got kids. Okay, everybody, I'm going to share something important with you right now. My volume came down. I slowed down because it's important. So now you're like, oh, this must be important. And then you start to lean in as I bring my voice down. So those are different parts of public speaking also, but also here in this virtual world, I have to understand if I'm going to show you something to my hands, if my hands go outside the screen, you can't see it. Right. So I might say, okay, it's this big and I got to recognize I'm in a box. So go to the edge of the box. If I'm on stage, I'm like, oh my God, it's this big. But now you're like, okay, all I see is his elbows.
Yeah.
So we have to do things like that. But the big piece is when we're on video or in person is people are watching all of it, not just listening to our words. They're watching our body language. They're listening to our vocal tone and our emotion. And then they're also listening to the words. So you got to have those three things involved.
Well, I learned something today. I've really, to be honest with you, when I do my podcast and I invite people in, I feel, and I normally just do it like I'm just having coffee or like I'm there with you. And I never really thought about the movements or the reactions. But now I'm going to pay more attention to that.
But even that, as you said, public speaking is interviewing. So if your style is you like to talk with people as if it's like, a coffee conversation, let's say you're going to get invited to speak to a group in person. You may want to bring up chairs onto the stage. You sit in one chair and the person you're interviewing, and that's your zone of confidence. That's what makes you work best. I've got a person I work with where she loves answering questions. So instead of having this whole written out speech, she takes questions, but what she does also is she goes, okay, everybody, here's some questions that got emailed or text to me. They're just questions that she wrote down, but she's got them on a card.
I love that.
So she's able to just respond to, she's like, okay, here's the top 5 questions that I get. And they talk about this one, especially with speaking. When you can answer questions, it actually gives you more validity. It gives you more confidence for the audience. Cause like, oh wait, they didn't just give me this canned speech. They actually were answering questions. So they're showing off their expertise. So right now, you and I had nothing pre-planned for this. You go, Frank, I'm just going to ask you questions. So you asking me questions and me answering actually makes me look more as an expert in public speaking than if I just kind of came out and gave you this pre-canned speech.
Okay. You said this is going to be an online class that people can sign up in December.
Yeah, well, in December, it's not going to be, quote, a class where you come in on one day. It'll be listed up. I can send it to you. And now I'm putting the pressure on to make sure it's done by December. But no, what's going to happen is you will pay for it. I'm still figuring out the price. I'm going to have it running for the holidays. But you'll be able to go in here and it's going to break down what I just shared with you plus more. There'll be resources, how to write your speech, what you need for a virtual, how to put slides together, how to be confident, how to dress your best. But it is a program where you will log into it and then you'll be self-guided. So it'll be like lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you go with it at your own pace for what works for you. And you'll be able to do it at home or you can do it in the car because you'll be able to, it's just, it's just logging into a website and, go and do. So
I love that.
Yeah. So it's just nice and going like every now and then, a couple of times a year, I will do through Zoom. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do a quick seminar on how to it's not even a webinar. I tell people it's a virtual learning experience where I have people come in for about 2 hours and we break things down on how to improve, their speaking. And if one person shows up, then they got a lot of time with me. If 20 people show up, then people are fighting for my time. But the idea is I want to share, the experience of me going from being quiet and shy to where I am now. And like I said, it's opened up so many doors. So I got groups like, Frank, will you be willing to speak for us? Will you be willing to help us out? Or even today, there's a board I sit on and I'm part of the fundraising committee. So I go and use my public speaking to go and talk to donors to get those donors to donate to the nonprofit. So that's me, once again, using my skill, my superpower, my gift from God to be able to not only help myself, but to help others.
I love it.
And you're doing that, with your podcast. So that's why I tell people, it's like, we can't compare. My format happens to be on stages as a keynote speaker. Your stage is your podcast.
Yeah. I do this for fun because I love people and I love learning about everyone's story. And if you're going to be my episode 62, I believe. And just today, no lie, just today, I'm like, okay, I have kind of like a blueprint almost, but I never really thought that I did until you just said it.
Yeah. And the thing is, you're smiling because it's inside of you. It's allowing you to be the best version of you. And you feel good about it. Versus, as I said, there's so many groups, and I had this when I took public speaking classes where they went to change me. And that's what this world is like. We try to change everybody and put everybody into the same box.
Yeah.
But the way to really stand out is to be ourselves. Like when we see something that's different, we always turn our head to pay attention to it. When something looks the same or it's repetitive, it doesn't stand out. So as I said, for you, you're having fun. And when we see people having fun, we're drawn towards it. And you're having fun doing it as a podcast. So once again, that's you when we're having fun. So that draws us to you, where I'm going to have somebody else who goes, hey, Frank, I'm a teacher. That's public speaking. So I choose to teach in a school. Okay, fine. That works for you. Hey, Frank, you know what? I choose to have, a radio show. Okay. And that's how they go use their piece. And it all works. But you just have to figure out what works best for you and allows you to feel your best. Because once you feel your best, you're able to express yourself and share that knowledge that you have to help others.
Yes. So I wanted to ask you, who influences you? Do you have a motivational speaker that you follow?
Yeah, I don't have one particular person. I'm a part of the National Speakers Association.
Okay.
So I've got a lot of friends who are professional speakers. But I would say that the people who've truly inspired me the most, and I don't have a name to give to you, have been comedians. I mean, There's a lot of people who are public speakers or want to get better at public speaking. I told them they can go on Netflix, but Jerry Seinfeld had this show and it's called Comedians Drinking Coffee in Cars. And when you can go and watch, comedians are some of the most, if you want to say, when I say raw, but they share their soul with people. I mean, whether it be the stories and the way they express, and they're pretty much naked up there on stage. I mean, there's no screen or slides. It's just them expressing themselves. So I've had friends I've used to book comedians, but I've had friends who are comedians. I had a friend who's a comedian like, hey, Frank, I challenge you to come to open mic night. Open mic might made me better as a speaker because get up there, because you have to be able to get people to connect with you within a few minutes. You want them to laugh. So when I watch comics, I've loved just going and seeing and watching how they move on stage and how they interact and how they engage. The audience is going to throw something at them. They got to respond to it. So I love that piece because years ago I had an acting coach and she made a comment. I took it as a negative, but she goes, Frank, you're an entertainer, not an actor. And I'm like, ooh, what does that mean? And she goes, actors stay true to the part. So whatever the scene is, so they use the part and that draws people in. She goes, you're an entertainer, which I found out speakers are entertainers, comedians are entertainers, podcast hosts are entertainers, hosts are entertainers, because we have to react to what the audience gives us and then re-engage with them. So if I came here and just had a pre-planned speech for your podcast, it wouldn't work. Yeah. You're throwing questions to me and you and I are going completely off the cuff and adjusting based off of the feedback you and I are giving to each other. I mean, that's communication. I give you some information, you provide me feedback. I take the information, I give you feedback, and it's back and forth. It's a dance. Yeah. When you have acting, guess what? Even if the crowd is laughing or crying, I have to stay true to the part. I can't change. So when I go and watch a comedian or a speaker who doesn't use slides and it's just them and a microphone in front of a whole bunch of people and they got to react to it, that's what really inspires and motivates me, just to see how their brain works and how they react to it. Having people boo you, that's going to happen. I mean, there's little stuff like that, but those are the true people who really inspire me, is to stay connected with other entertainers and to
Yes.
find out what they're doing to keep people engaged and how they're making sure that people are getting the best product possible.
Yes. Talking about comedy. So when I first saw you, and you're probably going to know where I'm going with this. When I
Yep.
first saw you, I said, man, he reminds me of someone, and I can't figure out who. So then, before I interview my guests, I like to kind of do my own like FBI work,
Mm-hmm.
and so
FBI stalking depends on what side of the thing you're on. Yeah.
right. And so I went on your YouTube page, and so you have great content on there. And so I stumbled upon the video that you talk about your celebrity. It's a
Doppelganger.
ganger.
Doppelganger. Yep.
Yes, who is the NBA Hall of Famer Reggie Miller. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
There it
oh my
is.
God, that's it.
Yeah. And the thing is, you're smiling, you connected with it. And once again, we're talking about speaking here. So whether you're the people listening right now, they're in business, they're going for a job, and they have to speak in public. It's those genuine, authentic stories, once again, that connects with people. So for years, people told me, you look like Reggie Miller. I mean, I've told people, I told you about the comics earlier. I went to this conference where you have all these entertainers and we're showcasing to get booked for work. And I'd been the MC that night, and I go, hey, everybody. I think I walked out with the jersey and I was like, maybe you probably think Reggie Miller is here. And everybody cracks up laughing. So we go to the restaurant, and this guy comes up, man, he's like, I love that bit you did on Reggie Miller. He goes, my wife, that's her favorite player. She thinks you're him. He goes, would you be willing to sign an autograph right now? So I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you know his number? So I'm like, okay, I'll go along with the bit. So I sign his number. Like, it's number 31. And I sign it Reggie Miller. And he goes back across the restaurant. And because you're seeing all these entertainers and people there, it's probably pretty easy to believe that I'm him. So he gives her the autograph, and she's hugging him and kissing him, like, and I'm like, and all the comics around me like, oh, that was wrong. I'm like, yeah. So then we're walking out, and we have to walk by this couple to get out. So I tap him on the shoulder, and I tap his wife. I'm like, hey, he's like, you got an amazing husband. Hope you like that autograph. And I kept going, and they're all like, oh, that's wrong. And I was like, well, I didn't want to break her heart. Like, hopefully he told her at some point that I wasn't him, but I had a whole bunch of stories like this going on. And, people finally said, hey, Frank, you talk to people about how to live their dreams. And I made the comments like, you know what, let me go test this out. Let me see if I can use my recipe to, go for something big. And I said one year, like, hey, you know what? I was like, I'm going to meet Reggie Miller this year. And I shared it with the world and told everybody I'm going to go do it. And 9-10 months goes by, and I still haven't met him. But because I shared it with people out there doing my deal, all of a sudden one day I get these messages like, hey, Frank, Reggie Miller's in Phoenix. You got to go meet him. And at the time I'm in Ohio. And I'm like, okay, I'll fly back. I get home at midnight. Then it rained. I came back in like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, I was like, this is my chance to meet him. I've been telling people on stage for years about this. And she goes, well, your son's got an assembly the next morning. You got to go to that. You got to be your dad piece. So I tell people, hey, it's not going to happen. But that one time we happened to get rain here in Phoenix, he was going to go hike on Camelback, and he told fans to meet him there. And if they answer questions, he'll give them tickets. I didn't want the tickets. I just want the picture, because people have been waiting for 20 years for it. People go, hey, Frank, he's not going to be hiking today, but he'll be in front of, the Suns Arena. Was it I forgot the name now, Footprint Arena, whatever the name they made it.
I think it's Footprint.
Yeah. So I asked my wife, and she's like, she had plans that day. She's like, well, just, take our daughter, with you. So we got in the car, we came down, and I started to video it. You saw it on YouTube. Everybody listening to this right now, they can go watch it on YouTube. And I sent him a message, because he's got a good sense of humor. He goes, like, hey, it's like, I got stopped in Indiana. People think I look like you. Almost got a suite in Vegas. People thought I looked like you. He goes, oh, I got stopped today too. People think I look like you. So we've had some jokes going back and forth, and we finally met, and he goes, hey, it's great to see this. And he started joking. And even his co-commentators there was like, oh my God, you guys could be brothers or cousins. Like, she's like, you really look alike. So it was funny. And then the funny thing was, a few months after I met him, I was doing an event with Shaquille O'Neal, and Shaquille goes, wow. First thing he makes, like, hey, Reggie Miller. And I mean, so and we've worked together twice now, and that's why he'll joke around and call me. So it's funny, when you go, but that's the thing about speaking. You brought that up. We could talk about who I've talked to, where I've talked, my awards and degrees. That doesn't mean anything. The thing that meant the most to you was a story of my life, saying I met, my doppelganger, or this celebrity. That's what happened. So with speaking, that's what people come out to hear. They want to hear your story or your point of view or your experience. And many times you're trying to give like all these facts and figures and, Gallup poll numbers. And that's not what people want. They want somebody where it's like, hey, you know what? I can go look that stuff up on Google. I can go read a book about that. I want to know, what does Agnes think? What's her perspective?
Yeah.
What's her thoughts on this? That's why I'm there. And when you realize you get to share your knowledge, information, or experience, it makes the speaking so much easier because you're just sharing a part of you. Speaking in public is sharing. It's not a presentation. It's not a speech. It's not a sales thing. It's sharing. And we all love to share.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm so excited for you to have met you, that you're in the Valley.
Yeah.
So you're super close, just in case, there's people that I know in my organization that are looking to expand and get better at their public speaking. I have someone to,
Right. And here's the beauty. If you ever want to, really work it out, if you can find either a space virtually or in person, and you want to get multiple people together, I tell people, everybody listening, I offer group discounts. Okay. Because whether I speak to one person for 2 hours and coach or work with them, or there's 20 in there.
Yeah.
But what happens is we're able to, make it more affordable for people, but still touch as many lives as possible. So if you got a whole group, whether it be your employer or your friends in your network, and they want to get better at public speaking, or anybody who's listening to this podcast right now, and you say, hey, you know what, Agnes, I want to get better. Can you bring Frank in? We can set up a date. Because you said, I'm here in the Valley. We can have a spot. We'll meet in person. I'll show everybody, what I know and what I'm continuing to go. But even with that one, I'm not sure if you know about it. I've got a group on Facebook. It's called Spice Up Your Speaking.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Okay. So it's called Spice Up Your Speaking. You can look it up on Facebook. If you go to my website under the coaching section, there'll be a link for it there also. But all you have to do is just join the group. It's a free group, but it's a private group because all my members asked to keep it private. There's like 400 people in there. And several times a week, I share strategies on how to be more confident on stage, how to get even paid as a speaker. But I share everything I've learned through my speaking journey. And once again, is it the end all hero? No, it's just what I've learned. And I'm sharing that with people, just like we shared here today on your podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. I actually thought of you last Wednesday because, as you know, I work for the city of Mesa. And I just learned that we have this in Mesa. And you might know because you've been in the Valley longer than I have. But we had the art of storytelling. And it was Tomas Stanton. I don't know if you ever heard of him. So apparently the Mesa Arts Center has a program called Project Lit.
Yep.
You've heard of it?
Yeah, there's a group here. I think since you said he works for the Mesa Center of the Arts, there's an alliance for pretty much like art centers around the state. And I spoke for them one time. So who knows? I might have met him, but I got to hear about it there. It's
so I thought about you because I'm like, okay, he works with apparently there's like a youth group that comes out and they do open mics and they do this whole storytelling thing. And I thought about you. I'm like, oh, I wonder if he can come out. So we'll get in touch with that.
Yeah, no problem at all.
So what's next for you besides this upcoming
next
class or seminar?
So next for me right now is, especially as a professional speaker, you start to understand that 20% of what I do is actually speaking on stages. It's the other 80% of the behind the scenes business work is to get on those stages, or especially you start to realize there's multiple streams of income. It's not just all speaking. So as you said, the course there on the public speaking, that one's going to come into place. Then there's going to be a session on mindset. So how to go from this fixed mindset to a fresh mindset of where you're thinking about what you can do versus what you can't. So I got to go get that recorded here. Then from there, I got people like Frank, we want to be paid as speakers. So I'm re-recording that session. So, I mean, there's that piece there. As far as programs, there's a couple of books that I want to get written. So I've got 4 so far. There's about another 3 or 4 that are up here that I've got to get out. I mean, so that's the piece, there. So the big one is just continually growing my business, but figuring out ways to do it that align with the fact of I want to work, but I don't want to work and jeopardize my family. I want to spend more time with the family to be able to go. I mean, even last week, I was able to bring my family to Ohio because I used to live in Ohio with me for a week. I had some speaking there. I had an awards ceremony, but my family got to come along and be a part of that. So my case is looking for more opportunities to have my family involved in the business, but then also making sure that I'm positioning myself to where I do have that time. Because when I did get fired, I'll be honest, I was going to fire my employer. They just did it before I did. They pulled the trigger first. And the ultimate piece was to have more time for me. is not to go work more or work harder, but you always hear the piece about working smarter. So I want to be able to have that point to where, you know what, I might work 10 hours in a day, but it might be a few hours in the morning, take a break, spend some time with the family or the kids or some friends, or a little bit more after there, take a break, family, and maybe do a little bit more before I go to bed. It's spread out. It's not the same of just, got to go to work. It's 9 to 5, come back. There's not the same enjoyment. So that's the piece there, is just getting better at what I do. I'm looking for just bigger audiences as far as doing my keynotes. I want to just get, speaking around the world. I mean, that's the big one. I want to share my message, with the world. And that's what I'm working on, is just more avenues to share my knowledge.
Is there anything else you would like to add or discuss that perhaps we didn't touch on today?
No, I mean, the big piece is when I come on to shows like yours is I let people know we may not have actually met, but we've connected. So this is the beginning of a relationship.
Yeah.
So my website is frankkitchen.com. If you go on social media, it's just Frank Kitchen. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out. Just click the button. We're one click away from connecting with people. I respond to people as quickly as I can. If it's important enough for people to reach out to me, like you reached out to me, it's like, hey, Frank, would you be on my show? Then you know what? If it's important to you, then it's going to be important to me. So for people who've got questions about, how I got into speaking, the programs I've got coming up, just want to say hi. Go ahead and just look up Frank Kitchen. Just type in Google Frank Kitchen speaker, and you'll find me. And just say, hey, you know what? I listened to you on, Agnes's, podcast. I would like to be, connect with you. And I'll be like, okay, awesome. So that's all I got to do. They just got to reach out to me and just say, hey, you know what? I heard you on the podcast and I'd like to stay connected. So they can say, hey, you know what? I'm a level up tribe member, if we want to say it that way. And I want to stay connected.
Yes, awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you in the last hour.
Mm-hmm.
You gave us a lot of tips and tricks to improve our public speaking. And it starts with confidence, right? And finding your story. What was the other one? Confidence, story.
So the case is, we said we got to be confident, but we're going to be confident in ourselves. We're going to be confident in our words. We're going to be confident in our message and confident in our environment. If you're not confident in any of those 4 areas, you're not going to be able to speak confidently in public. And the big piece is your story or your experiences are the most powerful asset that you have, the most valuable asset. Nobody can move you off that position. Nobody can tell me your story, Agnes, as far as how you came here from Puerto Rico to the United States. That's your story. You know it inside and out. That's who you are. So you can share that piece there to show other people, hey, guess what? Here's what it's like to be, a non-native speaker, to go from non-native speaker to, working for a city, one of the largest cities in Arizona, and running our own podcast. Okay. Can you please teach me how you did it? That's your recipe, not anybody else's. So your story, your experience is the most powerful thing that you have.
Well, thank you so much. Hope we can have you again on the show.
Definitely, anytime.
Well, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Please visit the website at www.leveluptribes.com. And please subscribe to the podcast and share with your family and friends. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. Catch you all next time, my beloved tribes.